Hey there, podcast enthusiasts. Are you ready to add a little sparkle to your day? If you're loving the insightful conversations and captivating stories on Mirror Talk Podcast, here's a friendly nudge to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the empowering messages and thought provoking discussions we bring to your ears. But wait, there's more. We're all about spreading positivity and inspiration, and you can be a part of it too. How? By sharing the love with your friends and family. Share this episode with your loved ones, and let's create a ripple effect of empowerment and growth together. And hey, if you've been enjoying what you hear, why not take a moment to leave us a glowing 5-star review? Your feedback fuels our passion to keep delivering content that resonates with you. So hit that subscribe button, share the love, and leave us a review. Let's keep the conversation going and spread the Mirror Talk magic far and wide. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, your support means the world to us.
Today's guest is the CEO and founder of PH Creative. He's a specialist speaker and 2 times best-selling author of Getting Goosebumps and Give and Get Employer Branding. He's a prominent employer brand thought leader. Welcome to the show, Bryan. How are you doing?
I'm good, Toby. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be talking to you today.
It's a wonderful delight and wonderful pleasure to be speaking with you also. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I'm looking forward to everything I'm going to learn from you about, employer branding and about your journey so far in the entrepreneurship, lane. And that's what I would love to start with, actually. I would love you to tell me what inspired you to start your journey of entrepreneurship and employer branding.
So it's an interesting one, Toby. This year, actually this month, 30th of March, we'll be 18 years old as an agency, which makes me feel old. But thinking back to when I started the company, it was a spontaneous decision and it was a reaction to a bad boss. So I remember I was in an office and I was going about my job. I was as a designer for a lifestyle magazine at the time. And I actually really loved my job. But they say people don't leave companies, they leave managers.
Yeah.
And one day the boss came out and he leaned into me on his desk with his 2 fists on my desk. And with his big head and coffee breath, he bawled me out. Like he shouted at me in front of about 40 or 50 people. Ooh. And he made me feel, it was humiliating. So I stood up, didn't say anything, went home, and I started the company the next day. And It was very spontaneous. And essentially I wanted to prove that you could start a company and be successful without being a jerk. And that's kind of been my sort of founding philosophy, So it's really nice now that we're in the employer brand space. And what we do is we help organizations define their culture and hopefully help them prioritize the culture and looking after their people, and happy people mean profitable, productive organizations. So that was the origin. And now it's kind of come full circle because we specialize in that very thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know before we started recording, I asked you for the meaning of PH Creative, but for the listeners out there, can you explain PH Creative and employer branding?
Yeah, so the PH comes from the litmus scale of the acid and alkaline is measured on, and it's measured on the pH scale. So the balance of form and function represents the sort of the center of the pH, the litmus scale of acid versus alkaline. So that's what it represents. That's what we strive for. And essentially PH is an organization that focuses on experience by design, that perfect balance of form and function again. And employer brand is how people describe your organization from an employment perspective. So it's about your reputation as an employer, the proposition that you offer them, and what we call the give and get. So what you have to give an organization in in terms of what you get in return.
Mm.
And then the final sort of element of the strategy sort of aspect of employer brand is the talent experience. So how it feels to show up to work, and how the organization looks after you and supports you and provides. So it's all of those things, but essentially it's your reputation as an employer.
Yes, I love that. And I believe the reputation is very, very important. So I would love you to educate us or enlighten us on how we as employers or, prospective employers to build a solid and effective reputation for our company or for our businesses.
So they say, it can take years to build a reputation, and it can take minutes or moments to lose it. And I think over the last 2 years with COVID and everything that's happened, we've seen organizations that we thought were great brands lose all credibility based on how they've treated their people. So when you look at organizations and stories in the press where thousands of people have been fired over Zoom or over text message or whatever,
Yeah.
it really destroys the reputation they have. And what's interesting, Toby, is in this day and age, with millennials officially running the world now, people are making consumer decisions based on how organizations have treated their people over the last 2 years. So employer brand has risen in priority and importance, because how you think of an organization as an employer also affects what you think of them as a consumer. It's two sides of the same coin, employer brand and consumer brand. Ultimately, it's all just part of brand and what you think of that organization. So it's incredibly important, and it does take a long time to build up. You can't, with employer brand, you can't just claim to be the shiniest, the best, the most empathetic or compassionate or supportive, or you can't claim to pay well. Like if it's not true, you get found out. So it takes a lot of thinking and care and preparation and organization and all the rest of it. And there's some organizations out there who do that fantastically well. They are great places to work, truly. But now you might hear of like the war for talent. It's difficult to find great people and have them stay at your organization.
Yeah.
It's no longer good enough to be a great place to work. You've also got to be great at marketing the fact that you're a great place to work, which is where employer brand comes into its own. And it's really important. You need to be organized and effective at communicating not just the fact that you're a great place to work, but why, and be specific so people can make great career decisions. Our vision is everybody loves their job, and that's only going to become possible if we can work with the world's largest employers to help them better articulate their employee experience. So people can make smarter career decisions. So it's certainly an interesting space. And after COVID and everything else that's going on in the world, it matters that employers look after their employees and they are providing support and flexibility and empathy and compassion and all of these things that we need in our life. It's certainly an interesting space.
That's very true. And do you mean that, by the time we're able to market our business in a proper way, like, brand it in a proper way, are we going to be able to, compete with the businesses in the high levels? Like, are we going to be able to compete with the giants in whatever space that we are having our business in?
So that's a great question, Toby. And what's interesting is I'm actually noticing a trend of great talent leaving those bigger organizations and joining smaller companies where they're finding a sense of belonging, a greater sense of impact because their contribution matters more. In some of these big organizations, there's an arrogance that you can treat people poorly because you are this big company or this big brand. And, you may have heard of the Great Resignation. Recently there's so many people around the world quitting their job. I call it the Great Epiphany. People are waking up and reevaluating their life and thinking, actually, I want a better quality of life. And the trend we're noticing is a lot of people are leaving these huge organizations and joining small companies who have a better story to tell, a better proposition on offer. And if you're a small organization, that size can actually work to your advantage because you can care more on a more individual level. You can demonstrate that you have a sense of togetherness that you don't find in large organizations. So there's a lot of benefits from a people perspective to be small and nimble and agile and human, demonstrating that you care and you listen with empathy. It can go a long way. So, this is the time for small business to rise and achieve great things, in my opinion.
Yes. So that means, small businesses could be a great place to work because the employees feel like they're in a family, basically. They feel they contribute immensely to the progress of the company, of the business, basically.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Family is an interesting word because, when it comes down to it, I think a close-knit team is probably as far as I would take it. Some people use the word family, but I think it's dangerous because, essentially in a family, there's unconditional love.
Yeah.
And the difference is in an organization that needs to make a profit. That love is definitely conditional. It's conditional on, you have to contribute in a meaningful, significant way.
That's true.
But that said, a close-knit team with deep respect and empathy and compassion and caring is definitely very achievable and recommended in this day and age because people are wanting that sense of connection, and ultimately as humans, we're all looking for a sense of purpose, a sense of impact, and a sense of belonging. So if you're a small business, there's a very good chance that you offer those things disproportionately to larger organizations. The key is being as organized as the large organizations and being able to tell a coherent, consistent story, and then being clear about that and getting it out there to the right people. Because if you do that, now is the time to attract fantastic talent to your organization. So like I say, this is the time for small business to rise.
Yes. But I would love to know how to attract and retain the people that we need to win in our business. Like, how can we, attract the right people, the right talent that we need to grow as a business?
Another good question, Toby. And the key is understanding your business and having a very clear strategy of the capabilities you require in your people to move forward. And once you've got that information and you understand what's required to fuel your business, then the research piece of employer brand is really important. And it's nothing more than listening with empathy, listening with compassion, and really understanding the key motivators and drivers of your current people and where the magic is in your current culture. And once you get to that information and you understand, you can extract the insight of that exercise. You can then decide, okay, what do we want to keep? What do we want to dial up? What do we want to get rid of? What do we want to introduce to create a high performance culture that still has the essence of what we believe in, that stands on the core values that we all use to make decisions and behave on a daily basis. And it essentially comes down to that clarity. Because what you're looking for is universal truths across your organization that everybody buys into. And it might show up differently in finance department to the sales department to operations and so on and so forth. But what is it that shares a commonality across the organization that you can talk about passionately and authentically that's part of your culture? And if you can do that, Toby, there's a good chance that when you communicate that externally, you're going to find more people that are compelled to hear more. And we always ask why people join an organization, but then we ask, why do you stay? And interestingly, the answers are always different.
Yes.
So if you can understand why people stay, That's more important to talk about when you go to market and write a job ad and promote it on social media and make a short video and so on and so forth. That's the magic that you want to bottle and amplify if you can.
Yes. So for a novice out there, or for someone who is trying to, remodel his or her business, what would you say the culture should look like? How would you say the culture or the value or the core value of the company should look like, or a business should look like?
So that's interesting. I mean, usually, especially with small business, it's this sort of shadow of the leader, so you need congruence throughout the organization. And typically the core values typically come from the leader or the leadership.
Yes.
Because the core values are what drives an organization and sort of defines the founding culture. And the job of that is to sort of bring clarity around what that is so you can scale it. And what's useful is if you then develop guiding principles so people can take those values and use them to make their own independent decisions. And that's how you breed and scale a culture. If people make independent decisions that are congruent with the values from the leader, the founder, or the leadership team. Yeah. So that's in principle where it has to start.
Okay, so we have to go deep to the leader. Who is the founder of this company? What are his values? What are his interests? What does he want to get out of his business? And that way, we have to design the core values.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it can start. With slightly larger organizations, sometimes there is already a defined mission and vision and a set of values. So understanding those and making sure that that's the sort of foundation for an employer brand is super important. And then if you speak to everybody in the organization, and if there's sort of hundreds or thousands, which sometimes there is with our clients, you might do surveys and focus groups, and other research. Yeah. And typically we're looking for the leadership view, the employee view, because usually they're a little bit different. The leadership view is more aspirational and forward facing. The employee view tells you exactly what it's like today, a snapshot of the good, the bad, the ugly in the organization today. Sure. And then the third lens is the market view. So what are your competitors saying and claiming and proving and talking about? Because you want to be authentic and true, and it needs to align with the business, but it also needs to be different enough to get attention in a congested marketplace. So leadership view, employee view, and market view are the three lenses that you need to then put on the research to understand where to focus your story and what to dial up and what to really reinforce when it comes to activation.
Yes, I love the fact that you're talking about stories, and you said it also earlier, and I would love to learn how we could tell powerful and purposeful stories that align perfectly with our brand strategy. Like if we want to, like you said earlier, making short videos to advertise a position in the company, and writing the job description. But can you tell us in details how we could, make it much more powerful, purposeful, so that the story could be impactful to the other people out there, and they will see our brand for what it is?
So story structure is something that I've studied for a number of years. And, the art of telling a good story has fascinated me for a long time. And I think, it's very powerful. And story, they say, is like, if our brain was hardware, story would be the software we use to make sense of the world. Yeah. So being able to tell a good story, whether it's a long story or a short story, is absolutely critical if you want to make any sort of human connection with somebody else.
That's true.
And to do that at scale is a big part of employer brand. One technique that we use is called the and, but, therefore technique. And it can turn any sort of linear narrative or any sort of string of information into a story. And it goes something like this. If you can, let me say that if I asked you, tell me something that you are proud of in your career. So what are you proud of achieving in your career, Toby?
Oh yes, I'm proud of achieving, this exposure, this growth, exposure to, more technical terms. For example, like background to my career, I'm an engineer, by
Mhm.
profession. So I'm proud of, the growth, basically the increase in the responsibility in the company, in the ability to do more than I was able to do at the beginning. Yeah.
So let me ask you, what has that what has that growth led to? What is the benefit of that growth that you're proud of?
Yes. So the benefit of that growth is, for me personally, the ability to manage my resources better, my time better, and the possibility, it has given me the opportunity to be able to manage resources better, I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's use and but therefore to look at your situation there. So I'll use and first, and it's something like this. I'm an engineer and I work on problem solving and I code and um, I enjoy working with other people in teams um, and driving and building things.
Mhm.
But, and this is where we go from and to but I wanted to push myself and learn more and grow as a person. And I wanted to see what I was missing out on in other aspects of life and take my career to the next level. Okay.
Yes.
So that's the but. Therefore, I started a podcast and got myself out of my comfort zone so I could speak to more people from different worlds and benefit from their experience and develop my skills in a much greater way. And it was scary at first,
Mm.
but I overcame that fear, started a podcast that I'm very proud of, and now I'm a much better engineer and all-round person. So
Mm.
you can see we went on a journey. We
Yeah.
started with the status quo.
Yes.
We then used it but to put an obstacle in the way.
Hmm.
And we talked about what happens when you get over that with the therefore is a conclusion.
Hmm.
So status quo, challenge and obstacle, solution, or um, what we call a thesis at the end. So we've got, sorry, it's thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So where something's changed for the better
Change.
at the end.
Yes.
So if we use that technique, you can imagine talking to employees or leaders of an organization
Mm.
where they can articulate your employer brand in a very personal way
Mm.
and demonstrate how they've grown as a person, how they've changed, how they've learned or gone on some sort of journey that other people can relate to. And that's the key. If people can then vicariously see themselves in your story, then we're creating human connection, and that's the theory.
Yes, I love that human connection, as in the ability to, tell your story in a way that is relatable to other people. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's exactly it. If people can relate to it, and
Yes.
maybe somebody listening to that story, for example, somebody's an engineer, but they want to take their career to the next level and
Mm.
they're wondering what brave step they should take, or maybe they're scared of taking a brave step.
Mm.
By hearing your story, they could be inspired to do the same or convinced to go on the same journey as you. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to influence people and give them a set of tools to decide whether they want to take the journey towards your organization, or to get to know an organization or not, based on what they've heard.
That's true. Yes. Well, thank you so much for that illustration. I appreciate it. I mean, next time I'm going to tell my story that same way, with the and then the but and the therefore afterwards.
That's it.
Yes.
And but therefore it actually came from Trey Parker, who's the writer of South Park.
Mm.
It's a technique he uses. He writes every episode of South Park as quickly as he can. And then he goes back and tries to change every and into a but, and then insert a therefore.
Mm.
And that's how he creates story arcs when he writes for South Park, interestingly enough.
Wow, that's so interesting. And that's why it's successful.
That's why it's so successful. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so talking about, writing, you're also an author, you've written 2 books. And
Mhm.
one of the books I would love us to, look into a little bit is the Give and Get Employer Branding.
Mhm.
There you talk about, repelling. And I would love to know, first of all, what are the efficient ways of sourcing for talent, and why is
Mhm.
repelling candidates the best strategy for winning the war for talent?
Yeah. It certainly sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it, Toby? But and this works for large organizations and small companies as well. But essentially, employer brand, the conventional approach to employer brand is essentially just borrowed from marketing and sales and advertising,
Mm,
where you want to put your best foot forward and you talk about the strengths, the benefits, and the opportunities on offer. And it can be seen as the sunshine truth, the rainbows and unicorns version of reality.
yeah.
And actually, what happens there is you get a lot of people's attention and you get a lot of applicants, you get a lot of people applying for jobs. But the difference between sales and marketing versus employer brand and recruitment is you can only give one person that job. So for every open role, you might get hundreds, tens, or even thousands of applicants, but you can only hire one person for that role. So if you think about it, Toby, it makes perfect sense. You don't actually want hundreds of applicants per role.
Mm,
If you could get a smaller number of highly qualified applicants,
mm,
because you've repelled more people than you've compelled to apply for the role in the first place, then it's actually really efficient, because if the quality is good, you're speaking to people who are better matched from a cultural perspective. They're going to find happiness in the role. They have the
yeah.
competency to and the capabilities to do the job.
Mm,
Then everybody wins. And certainly in large organizations, we've worked with companies where they get thousands of applicants
mm,
and the recruiters can't possibly deal with them all.
mm,
In fact, there's technology being born, using artificial intelligence to try and sift through a mountain of applicants because of that very nature.
mm,
So the give and get approach is essentially a more authentic, more balanced way of talking about the reality of the roles that are being advertised.
yeah.
And there is harsh realities and adversities and challenges in any job,
Mm,
because that's the nature of life.
that's true.
And what we found through research and doing this with some of the biggest brands in the world
Mm,
is if you are upfront about those challenges,
mhm,
it will dissuade the unqualified people from applying, which is good. But it will also make the job more compelling, because those who have the capability of doing it find value in the challenge.
yeah.
And certainly internally, the people already doing that role,
Mm,
they know that they're acknowledged and appreciated for the sacrifices and commitments
yeah.
that they have to endure, and being upfront with the demands and expectations that an organization places on you in any
Mm,
role,
mm,
because you are there to do a job. You're
yes.
actually cutting to the chase and being a lot more upfront about the reality. And this is why Glassdoor is worth over $1 billion. And people will do up to 6 to 8 hours research before applying for a job, because they want to know, what's it really like, and do I have what it takes to thrive in that position.
Mm,
So we use that as ingredients, and it does sound counterintuitive, but actually what it does is it galvanizes an internal audience with appreciation and acknowledgement, and it polarizes an external audience and does a lot of the screening and filtering for you.
yeah.
um, because it's what it boils down to, Tony. It's just more honest,
Yes, true.
you know.
Mm,
So using the truth to sell, because you are selling, you're still selling your organization, but using the truth to do it is
mm,
so much more effective than only telling half the story and neglecting to lean into the challenges and adversities and harsh realities somebody might find.
yeah. So if I understand this properly, is it like, okay, I know this is my truths. I'm standing in my truths, and I'm so clear. I have the clarity about my truths, and I'm saying this is who I am, what I am, and then yeah, would you be able to work with me, basically? And if you're not, then you are filtered out of the of the bucket. Then other
Yeah,
people.
so let me give you a tangible example. We've worked with Apple, and they're a fantastic company, but they're not for everybody. Most organizations, that's true for. Apple demand a lot from you. Your work-life balance in some positions can be non-existent. You can have to work on some of the most difficult problems in the world in technology. It can be relentless, and it can be a real challenge. And if you don't take the time to get to know people at Apple, you'll get very little support, because it's a relationship-based organization, and it doesn't have very much structure, believe it or not, for such a large organization and for such a successful global giant. It isn't hierarchical, it's not structured, it's a people-related organization. So some people don't like working in such a gray environment where there isn't much structure. So when you think about it, there isn't much structure and support if you don't make the effort to get to know people. The work-life balance can be non-existent to the point where you are driven towards fatigue and sort of burnout if you're not careful. But on the flip side, you are pushed, and you will soon find exactly what your potential is. You will become the best version of yourself very quickly. You're surrounded by the smartest people in the world, and you get to see your work in the hands of millions of people every day. Now, that is a very clear give and a very clear get, and it's not for everybody. But to the right people, to some people, that is intoxicating. They really will commit the hours because they are passionate about the work, and they love to see the end result, the impact of their contribution in the hands of millions of people every day. Okay. So we're not trying to just be globally more attractive. With that message, you will turn off a lot of people, but that's okay. And that's the point.
Yeah. Okay. So this will lead me to your second book, Getting Goosebumps, which has to do with, making other people the talent gets goosebumps, improving your online presence and attracting great talents to your organization. So using the example of Apple now, how can Apple make the talent have goosebumps, when you have an open position or a vacancy?
So Getting Goosebumps was my first book, and we focus a lot on like recruitment marketing tactics, story architecture, and technique. And we in that book, my co-author and I, Dave Hazelhurst, who was at PH as well, we focused on a few things. The most apt aspect of that book is how we journey map the candidate experience, and taking the time to understand every stage of a process. How does it look, feel, and how people are thinking as they experience it? So it's experience mapping, and we look at what people are thinking, how people are feeling, how memorable is that moment.
Could you try again?
Sorry, my phone's talking to me. My watch is talking to me.
Yeah.
What people are thinking, how they feel, what's the memorable moment at that point, and how easy is it to progress? And at every touch point as you go through that process, we map and score what that looks like. And then you can stand back and redesign that experience to be optimum. So if you know the night before an interview, your candidate is going to be nervous, you might send them something to boost their confidence. And it could be as simple as, here's where to park, here's what to expect when you come in, here's what's going to happen. There's going to be 3 questions you need to answer straight away. These are those. Don't forget you're here on merit. We chose you. We think you're going to be great. Good luck, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It might be as simple as that. or it might be a range of videos that say, like, I am doing the job you're applying for right now, and here's what it looks like from my perspective. Here's what you might want to know about the environment or the colleagues or the work or whatever, and putting people's mind at ease. So by consciously thinking and stepping through each stage of the journey, you get to improve the experience by design. And if you can do that, and you inject the storytelling, and you have attention to detail from an experiential perspective, you just might give people goosebumps, change. And ultimately, if you think about it, if I tell you a story and it gives you goosebumps, there's no better end result than being able to physically change somebody's state with a story, change how somebody feels to the point where their physical state changes, giving them goosebumps. That's the uppermost euphoric sort of achievement from a communications perspective in my view, and that's why the book's called Getting Goosebumps. That's what we're aiming for with effective communication.
Yes. And do you believe that, with this effective communication, we're able to make our brand famous also? Like, we're going to make our brand a much more well-known brand because we make everybody have goosebumps basically by our stories.
Absolutely. Essentially it's only possible if there is an intention to do that. And usually there's some specificity around, okay, we want our brand to be famous, but when you say, okay, well, what do you want to be famous for? So our work with Virgin, from a candidate experience point of view, we decided that it wasn't good enough to have a good experience as a candidate. We wanted to commit to a candidate being better off having gone through the process. So they become a better version of themselves having applied for a job with Virgin. And then when you set out to achieve such a lofty goal, you have to really analyze, okay, every time someone touches our brand, what are we going to do to live up to that higher purpose? And it really takes your standards from here to here. And it's not easy, but when with Virgin, the night before an interview, which is a good example, Toby, with it being Virgin, we got Usain Bolt to record a series of videos, and we sent personal messages from Usain Bolt to a candidate saying, success is all about preparation. You've got this, give it your all, and people are getting these messages from Usain Bolt the night before an interview, and they felt great. Can you imagine what that might feel like? So we did those sorts of things. And before working with Virgin, their candidate experience was notably quite poor, which is why they brought us in. And very quickly, we took their experience to be from the negative to very positive, such that people were becoming customers because they had a great experience as a candidate, instead of some customers who were applying for jobs were actually cancelling their contract and moving to a competitor as a result of negative candidate experience. So we managed to flip that on its head, and we're quite proud of that. But it's because of that philosophy of getting goosebumps and setting out to focus on experience by design. That's the difference it can make.
Yes, that's so lovely. I'm going to also pay attention to this when I, have an organization or a business myself. I always want to make everybody have goosebumps and, have a positive experience for everybody, basically. That's good. Yeah. So
it reminds me of the quote of Maya Angelou of, people will forget what you say and did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
That's true.
And that's a sort of mantra of ours. That quote follows us around, and that is in essence the litmus test of experience by design.
Yes, you have to make everybody feel welcomed and feel seen, basically. Yes. So I'd love you to enlighten me on EVP, employee value proposition. So how should a business organization properly carry out their EVP?
So in very basic, simple terms, Toby, this is the give and get of your employer brand. So it's being very clear with what you require from a candidate so they can make a decision as to, do I have what it takes to thrive? as well as what you have to offer. So it's not a one-way broadcast of your strengths, benefits, and opportunities. It's a two-way value exchange. So traditionally, conventionally, it's if you have the capability to code in C# and you can do HTML5, then we will pay you X amount in order to do that. We think about it, that's very transactional. It is a give and get, but it's transactional.
Yes.
And people are looking for a sense of impact, purpose, and belonging. So the job of the EVP these days is to be a little bit more well-rounded and less transactional with what you're asking from a candidate if they were to be an employee and what they will get in return. And compensation and benefits is part of it, but are they going to enjoy who they are as a person? Are they going to grow? Are they going to get closer to their career ambition? Are they going to like the people around them? Are they going to be supported by their manager? Is the work going to be interesting enough? These are all the considerations when trying to match the natural strengths of a company with the preferences and priorities of people who are considering your organization as their next career move. So the EVP is that value exchange, the proposition, what you have to give and what you stand to get in return.
Yes. That's good. So so it's about the impact basically that the employee has to offer the company. Yeah.
It's very much about the impact somebody can have on an organization and the impact that organization can have on your life. So that's a very good way of looking at it. It is all about impact. Yes.
Impacts. Yes. Great. And earlier you told me about, telling the truth, but I love also, compare telling the truth and bragging. Like, when you have a big organization like Virgin or like Apple, they could brag that they're the world giants or they're the biggest, or also compared to them telling the truth. So, how does selling and always telling the truth work better than just bragging that, we're the giants? It's an opportunity for you to work with us, basically.
Yeah, I think the days of just being able to brag as a brand are over, really, because people are tired. People recognize that bravado, and also, people are smart. People are suspicious of big brands claiming big, bold things and making something out to be the sunshine version of the truth. So, believe it or not, an employer brand, even, it's still quite refreshing for an organization to say, look, we're not perfect, but we're great at this. We're striving to get better at that. And we need you to help us because you can be a valuable contributor to what we're doing. This is the journey we're going on. This is our vision, but there's lots of gaps and we need your help to fill them. And I think if you can tell a story like that, people can see where they will fit in, see their contribution that matters. They can quickly understand that will give them the sense of achievement that they're looking for and the purpose they're striving for. And it's not as easy as just expecting, we're Google or we're Microsoft. Like, it just doesn't work like that anymore. And that's what we're seeing with the Great Resignation. People are waking up all over the world deciding, hey, I don't care you're a big tech company. I don't feel fulfilled, or I want more out of my life, or, I want more work-life balance, or I want to spend more time with my family, or whatever it is.
Yes.
So bragging about how great you are, it doesn't work personally if you think about it. It certainly doesn't work in marketing and advertising anymore. An employer brand has to work a lot harder to convince somebody to take you seriously as an employer, and rightly so. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah, I love that. So for employers out there or entrepreneurs out there who are striving to create a wonderful, awesome, impactful brand, what piece of advice would you give them as a closing remark?
I think I would start with taking a good look at the leadership, and if that's you, think about the behaviors that you appreciate and value in people versus the behaviors that get on your nerves or frustrate or hold your organization back, because it really does need to be cohesively a thread right the way through the organization, and start with the core values and then understand what capability you need to drive your organization forward, and just do your research. Speak to your employees, understand what the employee experience is like now. Why did they join, but why do they stay? What is it about the people, the work, the challenge, the environment, and try and get to some semblance of the truth, and once you start there, you can build a very simple but honest give and get. It's like, hey, pal, this is the deal. This is all it is. This is the deal. If you come and work with us, here's what you will find. Yes, it's a lean team, and yes, the work-life balance isn't always perfect. However, we've got people who care about each other. We've got smart people who will collaborate well. You've got great, interesting work that will stretch your capability. And, when all's said and done, a lot of people go on to bigger and better things. So, we're seen as a career catalyst, or whatever your story is. As long as it's authentic and it's well balanced and it's competitive in the marketplace, that's a great place to start.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. And for people out there who would love to work with you, because I've learned a lot from this episode. You've taught me a lot about employer branding and about the importance of, attracting talent, the talent that you need for your organization. But I know there are a lot of people out there who still have a lot of questions to ask you that we're not able to cover in the course of this episode. So what's the best way to connect with you, the best way to work with you? Can you tell us about your services also, so that people could contact you for these services?
Yeah, no, thanks. Appreciate that, Toby. Well, I always love to connect with people on LinkedIn. So if you search for Bryan Adams, and it's spelled like the Canadian singer Bryan Adams, you should find me on LinkedIn easily enough, and I'll connect and chat there. Or you can check out our website, which is ph-creative.com. And submit an inquiry or just take a little look around. Or there's a sprint course that we offer where you can learn employer brand strategy in just 2 to 3 weeks, which is quite intense. It's a lot of pre-recorded video and a few live sessions where you can ask questions and we work through problems as a community. That's quite fun. So check out the website or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. So I'm going to place all of these links in the show note of this episode, all of the information about the books and your Twitter handle, your LinkedIn handle, and your website will be in the show note of this episode. So I encourage everyone to just connect with Bryan in the best way possible and become the best employer for your business and create the best brand ever that is impactful for yourself, to the world, and to your employees also. Thank you so much, Bryan, for this awesome conversation. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Toby. Thanks a lot.